There are stories we don't just tell, they tell us. Stories that, when we hear them, seem to call our name, expose our contradictions, and uncover the deepest layers of our hearts. Peter's journey is one of those stories. It's more than an ancient account preserved in John 21. It's a living mirror reflecting the humanity in every one of us. Think about who you are when the lights go out, when the masks drop, when only God is watching. Have you ever promised something with all your heart and still broken that promise? Have you looked in the mirror and felt the pain of failing someone you love? If so, you've already walked the same shoreline Peter walked. Peter was a human pendulum. One moment his faith was strong enough to step onto the water. The next he was sinking in fear. One day he boldly declared Jesus to be the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Soon after, he became an unwitting instrument of the enemy. Isn't that our story too? One day we sing with confidence, "I trust you, Lord," and the next we're swallowed by anxiety, discouragement, or the very sin we swore we'd left behind. How many times have you swung back and forth like that? Peter's self-confidence reached its peak at the Last Supper. Picture it, the atmosphere heavy, Jesus speaking of betrayal and imminent death. Peter bursts out, "Even if everyone else falls away, I will never fall away. I'm ready to go with you to prison and to death." What courage, or was it presumption? How often have you believed sheer willpower was enough to keep you faithful, only to discover painfully that human strength can't sustain divine promises? That same night reality struck hard. In the Garden of Gethsemane, soldiers arrived. Jesus was arrested. The disciples scattered. Peter, who had promised to stand firm, followed at a distance, close enough to watch, far enough to feel safe. It's here that the pendulum swung to its lowest point. In the high priest's courtyard, a small charcoal fire glowed in the chill of night. Its flickering light both revealed and concealed. A servant girl recognized him. "You were with him." Peter's heart pounded. "If I admit it, I could be arrested, maybe killed." "I don't know him," he replied, perhaps with a tremor in his voice. A rooster crowed somewhere, but Peter didn't notice. Another person pressed the question. Another denial. Again, "I don't know this man you're talking about." The pressure mounted. A third voice insisted, "Surely you are one of them, your accent gives you away." And with stronger words, maybe even an oath, Peter said, "I don't know that man." At that very moment the rooster crowed again. And the eyes of Jesus, those eyes, met Peter's. Not eyes of scorn, but of compassion, of wounded love. Eyes that had always known. That look pierced Peter like a sword. He remembered his proud promise and felt the weight of utter failure. He went outside and wept bitterly. Can you imagine the sound of those sobs in the dark, the shame burning his soul? Have you ever lived a moment when the echo of your mistake seemed louder than any hope of forgiveness? Scripture is brief. He went out and wept bitterly. But in those few words lies an ocean of feeling, guilt, regret, self-loathing. Perhaps Peter thought, it's over. God can't use me now. I failed when it mattered most. And you, have you ever felt you crossed a line of no return, as though grace had a limit and you went beyond it? After the crucifixion, the silence must have been deafening. For Peter, every heartbeat probably recalled his denial. While the other disciples hid in fear, he hid from himself. He must have replayed each detail, the smell of smoke, the rooster's cry, the penetrating gaze of Jesus. The bold leader was now a broken man, disqualified in his own eyes. The one who swore he'd die with Jesus was imprisoned by his own shame. Then came a surprising whisper of hope. When the women discovered the empty tomb, the angel gave them a specific instruction. Go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you into Galilee. And Peter. Two simple words, but what a message. It was as if all of heaven whispered, Peter, it's not over. I haven't given up on you. Can you hear that same whisper for yourself? That even after your deepest failure, God still calls you by name? Yet the weight of guilt lingered. Back in Galilee, unsure of what to do, Peter made a decision. I'm going fishing. On the surface it sounded harmless, a return to ordinary work. But spiritually it was more than that. It was a statement of resignation. The dream is over. The calling is done. I'm going back to what I know. Maybe you've said something similar. I'll just go back to my old life. This faith thing isn't for me. I tried and failed. What is your, I'm going fishing? Peter's choice pulled others with him, proof that our discouragement can influence those around us. The night was long. Nets went out again and came back empty. No fish. No hope. A perfect metaphor. When we try to live on autopilot, away from Jesus' presence, the result is always emptiness. How many times has your life felt like an empty net, no matter how hard you worked? It is exactly at this point of darkness and failure that God's grace begins to shine. Because Peter's story, and yours, does not end with denial. It ends on a beach at dawn with the risen Christ calling his name. Before that encounter, though, we must face the truth. Real restoration begins with honest recognition of our fall. There is no superficial healing with God. He doesn't sweep our sin under the rug. He meets us in the place of pain to pour out his grace. Maybe that's where you are right now, staring at empty nets, remembering broken promises, haunted by memories of failure that feel final. Listen closely, Jesus has not given up on you. Just as he prepared the dawn of restoration for Peter, he is preparing a new dawn for you. The silence after a great fall is often deafening. Peter knew that silence well. After that night of bitter tears and denial, he had to live with the echo of his own words. Every sunrise may have felt like a cruel reminder, you failed. Have you ever endured that kind of silence? One that isn't peaceful at all, but a relentless echo of regret? As news spread of Jesus' crucifixion and the shocking rumors of an empty tomb, Peter likely heard each report like a hammer striking his heart. The disciple who once vowed loyalty unto death now considered himself unworthy even to be called a follower. How many times have you judged yourself beyond redemption, convinced your story with God was over? But what Peter couldn't see was that grace was already moving toward him. While he hid in shame, Jesus was preparing the path of restoration. And here's a truth worth clinging to: God's grace doesn't wait for you to be ready. It meets you while you're still broken, still unsure, still running. And Peter. On resurrection morning, the women came to the empty tomb. An angel gave them a startling instruction. Go, tell his disciples, and Peter, that he is going ahead of you into Galilee. Mark 16 verse 7. Did you catch it? And Peter. Heaven called his name on purpose. What? Because Jesus knew Peter's heart was crushed under guilt, convinced he was disqualified. That small detail was like a personal note of grace. Peter, I know what happened. I saw it all. And I still want to meet you. Have you ever received an "and you" moment from God? A word or gesture so personal it felt like it had your name on it? Maybe it was a scripture that leapt off the page, a song that pierced your heart, a friend who showed up at just the right time. Those are whispers of a Savior who refuses to give up. That message changed everything, not because Peter had fixed himself, but because it proved Jesus still counted him in. Perhaps you need to hear this today: God has not crossed out your name. No failure can erase you from his invitation. The journey back to Galilee. The angel's message also carried a direction. He is going ahead of you into Galilee. Galilee wasn't just geography, it was the place of Peter's first calling, the shore where Jesus once said, "Follow me." By naming that location, Jesus was saying, come back to where it all began. Sometimes restoration means returning to our spiritual starting point, not to relive the past but to remember the love that first drew us. What is your Galilee? A moment when you first encountered God's grace? A memory of childlike faith, a promise you once cherished? The risen Christ invites you to revisit that beginning. Peter obeyed, but surely with a heart still weighed down. Will he really want me? Can he still use me? Have you ever walked that same uncertain road, hope flickering, fear whispering? I'm going fishing. Arriving in Galilee and not seeing Jesus right away, Peter uttered three revealing words. I'm going fishing. On the surface it sounded innocent, but spiritually it was a quiet resignation. Maybe this is all I have left. I'm going back to the old life. How often do we retreat to familiar habits or old comforts when disappointment hits? What is your I'm going fishing? Is it an old mindset, a destructive pattern, a relationship you know isn't healthy? Peter's boat represents the safe harbor of control when we feel unworthy of a new mission. Notice too how our choices influence others. The other disciples replied, "We'll go with you." Our despair can pull people with us, whose hope might be affected when you give up. A night of empty nets. That fishing trip was long and fruitless. Again and again the nets came up empty. It was as if God Himself whispered through the silence, "Without me you can do nothing." This is more than a story, it's a living metaphor. Haven't we all faced nights of empty nets? Working hard with no breakthrough. Trying to mend a relationship without success. Praying and feeling only silence? Those moments reveal a gracious truth. Human effort apart from Christ is futility. The frustration of an empty net is often grace in disguise, steering us back to dependence on Him. The dawn of grace. Then, just as the sky began to lighten, a voice called from the shore. "Children, have you caught any fish?" It was Jesus, though they didn't yet recognize Him. He chose the word children, not cowards, not failures, but children. What tender mercy. "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some," He said. They obeyed, and the net filled so quickly they couldn't haul it in. Abundance followed simple obedience. The lesson was unmistakable. Blessing flows not from skill but from listening to the Lord. John recognized Him first. It is the Lord. Peter, ever impulsive, wrapped his cloak around him and plunged into the water to reach Jesus as fast as he could. No hesitation. No rehearsed excuses. Just desperate love. Have you felt that sudden clarity, that moment you know the only answer is to run toward Christ? Perhaps today is your moment to leap from the boat. The horizon was turning gold as the first rays of morning brushed across the Sea of Galilee. After a long night of futile effort, the air smelled of damp nets and weary hearts. But what was about to unfold was not a story about fish, it was a story about souls. A tender greeting. From the shoreline came the gentle call. "Children, do you have anything to eat?" Pause and savor that word, children. Jesus didn't shout cowards or failures. He called them family. It was the same tender word He once used for the woman who had suffered for 12 long years. Someone who, like the disciples, knew what it meant to feel broken and ashamed. Can you hear Him speaking it to you? No matter how far you've wandered, Jesus still calls you child. The disciples answered with a simple, tired no. One small word carrying the weight of their fruitless night. How many times have you offered the same answer? When someone asked how you're doing and all you could muster was, "Nothing's working, nothing at all?" A miraculous catch. Then Jesus gave a simple instruction. "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some." They obeyed, and suddenly the net filled with so many fish, 153 large ones, the text tells us. They could hardly haul it in. This was more than a miracle of provision. It was a living parable. Your own strength brings emptiness, but my word brings abundance. Obedience to Jesus transforms barren effort into overflowing blessing. John recognized the truth first. "It is the Lord," he exclaimed. At those words, Peter's heart leapt. Without waiting for the boat, he threw on his cloak and plunged into the chilly water, swimming hard toward the shore. Picture it. His breath quick and uneven, clothes heavy with the sea, heart pounding. Peter carried no speech, no excuses, only the urgency of love. Have you ever felt that pull, that sudden realization that all that matters is getting to Jesus? Breakfast on the beach. When Peter reached the shore, he found a charcoal fire already burning, fish sizzling, bread waiting. That small detail, a charcoal fire, matters. The Greek word for this fire appears only twice in the entire New Testament. Once in the high priest's courtyard, where Peter had denied Jesus, and here on this beach of restoration. Coincidence? Never. Jesus intentionally recreated the setting of Peter's failure, not to shame him but to redeem it. The same kind of fire that once smelled like betrayal now smelled like forgiveness. Think of the places or memories you'd rather avoid, those that bring back regret or pain. Could it be that Jesus wants to meet you there, not to condemn but to heal? Before any conversation about guilt or calling, Jesus served them breakfast. The Lord of glory kneeling over a fire, offering fish and bread. Grace before confession. Love before explanation. Isn't that just like him? Lessons for us. Provision flows from presence. The disciples' net filled only when they followed Jesus' direction. Where in your life are you straining without his guidance? Grace redeems the memory. The charcoal fire, once the backdrop of denial, became an altar of hope. What memory might Jesus want to rewrite with his grace? Obedience precedes understanding. They cast the net before they knew it was Jesus. Sometimes God calls for trust before clarity. A personal invitation. The sun climbed higher, warming the sand. The smell of fresh bread mixed with the sea air. Everything about that moment said, "You are welcome here." Jesus didn't arrive with accusations or lectures. He came with breakfast and a quiet invitation. Sit. Beloved, can you imagine him preparing a simple meal for your soul, saying, "I know where you've been. I know what you've done. Come and be with me." This is grace, meeting you at dawn after a long night of empty nets. The gentle hiss of the waves mingled with the crackle of the fire as dawn unfolded. Peter sat close to the warmth, the smell of burning wood and fish drifting through the cool air. This was no ordinary fire. It was a charcoal fire, a brasero, and its meaning ran deep. The fire of failure and the fire of grace. In the New Testament, the Greek word for this charcoal fire appears only twice. First, in the high priest's courtyard where Peter denied Jesus, and now here on the beach where the risen Christ welcomed him back. Not a coincidence. Jesus deliberately recreated the setting of Peter's greatest failure. The same aroma that once carried shame now carried redemption. Have you noticed how certain scents or places can bring back memories in an instant? God doesn't always erase those memories. Sometimes he walks right into them to transform their meaning. Could it be that the very place you fear to revisit is where Jesus wants to meet you and heal you? A gentle, deeper healing. Peter could not sit by that fire without remembering the other one. The cold Jerusalem night. The accusing voices. The rooster's cry. Each spark rising from these new coals must have carried the echo of that awful moment. But Jesus didn't use the memory to shame him. He used it to heal. Grace does not hide our wounds, it redeems them. The place of disgrace became the place of restoration. Maybe you have a memory that still stings, a decision you regret, a moment you wish you could erase. Jesus doesn't ask you to pretend it never happened. He offers to stand with you in that very memory until it no longer speaks of failure, but of his mercy. From brokenness to calling. By the fire, Jesus broke bread and shared fish. Before any confrontation he served. This is the heart of the gospel. Love expressed in action before a single word of confession is spoken. Peter was not only forgiven, he was being recommissioned. The warmth of the fire was a silent promise. Your story isn't over. Where Peter's courage once failed, grace was now rewriting the ending. And so it is for us. The moments we most want to forget can become the very places God displays his glory. He turns the geography of failure into a garden of purpose. A new memory. From that day on, whenever Peter smelled charcoal smoke, he would not think only of his denial. He would remember breakfast with the risen Lord. The memory of shame had been overlaid with the memory of grace. What memory in your life needs that kind of holy rewriting? What sound or scent or date brings a pang of regret? Invite Jesus into it. Let him create a new association, not of guilt but of gratitude. The waves whispered along the shore while the charcoal fire crackled softly. Peter sat in the warmth of that fire, the memories of failure mingling with the scent of grace. Then Jesus began the conversation that would heal Peter's heart and reshape his calling. The question that pierces the heart. Jesus looked at him and said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Notice that Jesus did not call him Peter, the name meaning rock. He used his given name, Simon, as if to say, let's return to the beginning, to who you were before the promises and the falls. And the question held a gentle sting. Do you love me more than these? It reached back to that night when Peter had boasted, "Even if all fall away, I never will." Now Jesus tenderly brought the prideful comparison into the light, not to humiliate but to heal. Peter answered quietly, "Yes, Lord, that I love you." No bravado, no competition, just humility. Jesus replied, "Feed my lambs." The second question. Again Jesus asked, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" This time there was no mention of others, only a direct, heart-to-heart question. Peter answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." Here the Lord guided Peter from comparison to intimacy. It was no longer about being better than anyone else, it was about a personal relationship. The third question. A third time Jesus asked, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt. Perhaps he felt the ache of those three denials echoing in the three questions. But he also recognized that Jesus was probing the deepest part of his soul. He said, "Lord, you know all things, know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." Three questions for three denials. Three confessions of love for three failures. Each question was both a wound and a balm, cutting to heal, exposing to restore. Love over performance. Notice what Jesus did not ask. Will you promise never to fail again? Are you ready to lead perfectly from now on? He simply asked, "Do you love me?" The foundation of discipleship is not flawless performance. It is love. God is not recruiting the most capable but the most surrendered. He longs for hearts that love Him more than anything else. Pause and ask yourself, if Jesus asked you today, "Do you love me?" how would you answer? Is your service to God driven by love, or by a desire to prove something? A mission born of grace. Each time Peter affirmed his love, Jesus gave him a task. Feed my lambs. Take care of my sheep. Feed my sheep. Grace does more than forgive, it entrusts. Jesus not only pardoned Peter but also commissioned him to care for his people. The one who once denied him would now nurture his flock. Perhaps your own greatest failures can become your greatest ministry. Those who have been restored understand the wounds of others and can guide them to healing. Lessons for us. Grace offers a second chance. For every denial, Jesus offered Peter a new confession of love. Where do you need to let grace write a new story? Love is the foundation. God asks not for perfect track records but for hearts that love Him first. Service flows from restoration. When you have tasted forgiveness, you are called to share that love with others. Closing the conversation. By that morning fire, Peter wasn't merely forgiven, he was transformed. The same Jesus he had denied now entrusted him with a mission and a future. Love, not shame, would define the rest of his life. And today the risen Christ still asks each of us, "Do you love me?" He is not seeking perfection. He is seeking your heart. The morning light shimmered across the waves as Jesus spoke once more to Peter, words that would shape the rest of the apostle's life. "Truly, truly I tell you, when you were younger you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." John 21 verse 18. A prophecy of sacrifice. These were not poetic metaphors but a solemn prophecy. Jesus was revealing that Peter would one day glorify God through a death of ultimate surrender. The man who once swore he would lay down his life, but then faltered in fear, was now promised the grace to fulfill that pledge, not through impulsive bravado but through steadfast love. Imagine hearing those words. Moments after being restored, Peter learns that following Jesus will ultimately cost his life. And yet this was good news. It meant his future courage would not depend on his own strength but on the sustaining grace of God. Ask yourself, would you still say yes to Jesus if you knew the path would lead to suffering or even death? This is the weight and wonder of true discipleship. The daily cross. Jesus had taught it before. If anyone would come after me, let them deny themselves, take up their cross and follow me. Now Peter heard it anew. The call to follow Christ is a call to die to self, whether through literal martyrdom or the daily surrender of pride, comfort, and control. Perhaps your cross will not be a physical death, but each of us is invited to lay something down. Forgive someone who hurt you. Release a destructive habit. Obey God's direction even when it costs you your plans. What is the cross Jesus asks you to carry? Follow me, a personal invitation. After speaking of sacrifice, Jesus gave a simple command. Follow me. These words gather the entire gospel in 2 syllables of love and purpose. Not compete, not compare, but follow. Yet Peter, noticing John nearby, asked, Lord, what about him? Jesus answered, If I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. With that reply, Jesus cut through the root of comparison. The journey of discipleship is unique for each of us. John's path was not Peter's path, and yours is not mine. How often do we lose joy by looking sideways, measuring ourselves against someone else's story? Christ's call is personal. As for you, follow me. Living this call today. The cost is real, but grace supplies the strength. Following Jesus may mean surrendering dreams or comfort. The same grace that calls you will sustain you. Your path is your own. Stop comparing your journey to others. God's plan for you is unique and perfectly timed. Obedience is the greatest testimony. True love is shown not in words alone but in steadfast obedience, day after day. Questions for reflection. What part of your life still needs to be surrendered so you can truly follow Christ? With whom have you been comparing yourself, forgetting that God's invitation to you is personal? Are you willing to follow even when it leads to sacrifice? Peter's final witness. History tells us Peter eventually did give his life for Christ. According to early church tradition, when condemned to crucifixion, he asked to be crucified upside down, feeling unworthy to die in the same way as his Lord. What a transformation! From the man who trembled before a servant girl to the courageous shepherd of God's people. This is what grace can do. Turn fear into boldness, failure into faithfulness. The same call for us. Peter's journey, from I'm going fishing to follow me, proclaims timeless truths. Failure is not final. God turns our lowest moments into testimonies of redemption. Love is the foundation. Service to Christ is born of affection, not achievement. The cost is real, but the reward is greater. Following Jesus is costly, but his presence is worth everything. Today the risen Christ speaks the same invitation to you. Follow me. No matter your past. No matter who walks beside you. The question remains, will you trust his grace and follow wherever he leads?